Last week, I showed you a cartel that extracted $100 billion from home sellers. Today, I'm going to show you a company that sells you a $10 product for $400, and you thank them for it. Walk into a Sunglass Hut. You will see Ray-Ban, Oakley, Persol, Costa, Arnett. 8 brands, 8 logos, 8 price tags. They are all owned by the same company. Walk into a LensCrafters, same wall. Walk into a Pearl Vision, same wall. The wall is the scam, and the company that owns the wall just had its best year in history. EssilorLuxottica reported $49 billion in revenue for fiscal year 2025. That is not revenue over 5 years. That is revenue in 1 year. $49 billion. That is more than the GDP of Iceland. More than the entire eyewear industry in most countries. They did this by owning every layer of the business. They make the frames. They make the lenses. They own the retail stores where you buy them. They own the vision insurance that pays for them. And now they are building AI glasses that sit on your face and stream data back to the parent company. One company, 5 layers, complete vertical control. And they operate in 150 countries with a market share that approaches 50% in most developed nations. This is not a monopoly in the traditional sense. Traditional monopolies get broken up. Traditional monopolies face antitrust scrutiny. Traditional monopolies have competitors trying to enter the market. EssilorLuxottica has none of that. They have a competitor, Warby Parker. That holds about 8% market share in the United States. They have Zenni Optical and a few direct-to-consumer brands. And they have regulatory approval from every major government on Earth. The European Union approved the EssilorLuxottica merger unconditionally on March 1, 2018. That is when 2 companies, one that made lenses, one that made frames, became one company that makes everything. The EU looked at this merger and said no concerns, no conditions, just approval. That approval changed the entire industry. Before 2018, Essilor made lenses and Luxottica made frames. They were separate companies that worked together. After 2018, they were one company that controlled the entire supply chain, frame to lens, to store to insurance, to your face, and nobody noticed. Here is how the machine works. Layer 1. They make the frames. Ray-Ban is theirs. Oakley is theirs. Persol, Vogue Eyewear, Oliver Peoples, Costa, Arnett, all theirs. They also license brands from Chanel, Prada, Versace, and dozens of luxury houses. So when you see a pair of Prada sunglasses, you are buying a Prada-branded product manufactured by Luxottica. Layer 2, they make the lenses. Essilor, the lens company, makes Verilux progressive lenses, Chrysal anti-reflective coatings, Transitions photochromic lenses. They own the lens technology. They own the manufacturing. They own the distribution. Layer 3, they own the retail stores. LensCrafters is theirs. Sunglass Hut is theirs. Pearl Vision is theirs. Target Optical, those little optical shops inside Target stores are theirs. They operate over 7,000 retail locations in North America alone. Layer 4, they own the insurance. EyeMed is the second largest vision insurance provider in the United States. EssilorLuxottica owns EyeMed. So when your employer offers you vision insurance, there is a good chance you are buying insurance from the same company that owns the stores where you will use it. Layer 5, they are building the future. In June 2026, they launched Ray-Ban Meta Smart Glasses, AI-enabled frames that can take photos, record video, answer questions, and stream data back to Meta. They are not just selling you glasses anymore. They are putting a computer on your face and calling it fashion. Every dollar you spend on eyewear stays inside this machine. Frame to lens, to store, to insurance, to data. One company, complete control. The genius of this monopoly is that it does not look like a monopoly. When you walk into a Sunglass Hut, you see choices. You see 20 different brands. You see different styles, different price points, different logos. You feel like you are shopping in a competitive market. You are not. Those 20 brands are owned by one company. Those different price points are set by one company. Those different logos are manufactured in the same factories, distributed through the same channels, sold in the same stores. The illusion of choice is more powerful than a monopoly. A monopoly is visible. A monopoly invites scrutiny. A monopoly gets investigated. But when you have 20 brands that look different but are owned by the same company, that is not a monopoly. That is a market. That is competition. That is consumer choice. Except it is not. Ray-Ban Wayfarers cost $180. Oakley Holbrooks cost $160. Persol PO714s cost $240. Different brands, different price points, same manufacturer, same markup, same corporate parent extracting the same profit margin. The manufacturing cost for a pair of Ray-Ban frames is approximately $10 for plastic and acetate frames. The retail price is $180. That is a markup of 1,700%. For metal frames like the Aviator, the manufacturing cost is closer to $15. Retail price, $160. That is a markup of over 1,000%. These are not luxury goods. These are injection-molded plastic frames with basic metal hinges. They cost less to manufacture than a fast food meal. But they sell for more than a flight across the country. And you accept this because the logo says Ray-Ban. The logo says premium. The logo says you are buying quality. You are buying a $10 frame with a brand tax of $170. EssilorLuxottica owns or licenses approximately 80% of the major eyewear brands in the developed world. That is not an estimate. That is the number reported by antitrust advocates, consumer protection groups, and industry analysts. In most markets, when one company controls 80% of the brands, that is considered a monopoly. When one company controls 80% of the market, regulators step in. They investigate. They file lawsuits. They force divestitures, not for EssilorLuxottica. The company operates with regulatory approval in every major market. The United States Federal Trade Commission reviewed the EssilorLuxottica merger and raised no objections. The European Commission approved it unconditionally. The Canadian Competition Bureau approved it. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission approved it. Everyone approved it. And now one company controls 80% of the brands you see on every glasses store wall in the Western world. But they do not control 80% of the retail market. They control about 50%. The other 50% is split between independent optical shops, online retailers, and direct-to-consumer brands. That 50% should be their competition. That 50% should be driving down prices. That 50% should be offering alternatives. Except most of those independent optical shops still buy their inventory from EssilorLuxottica. Most of those online retailers still source their lenses from Essilor. Most of those alternative brands still manufacture in Luxottica factories. The competition is not competing with EssilorLuxottica. The competition is buying from EssilorLuxottica. When your competitors are also your customers, you do not have competition. You have a vertical monopoly with a thin layer of retail diversity for appearances. The approval that made this possible happened on March 1st, 2018. That is when the European Commission approved the merger between Essilor and Luxottica without conditions. Before the merger, Essilor was the world's largest lens manufacturer. They made Verilux, Chrysal, Transitions. They had manufacturing facilities in over 40 countries. They supplied lenses to optical shops worldwide. Luxottica was the world's largest frame manufacturer. They owned Ray-Ban, Oakley, LensCrafters, Sunglass Hut. They controlled the retail channels in North America and Europe. They were separate companies. They worked together. Essilor made lenses. Luxottica made frames. They were partners, not competitors. Then they merged. And suddenly the company that made the lenses also owned the stores that sold them. The company that made the frames also owned the insurance that paid for them. The company that manufactured the product also controlled the retail price. Consumer advocates warned against this. Antitrust experts raised concerns. Industry analysts predicted price increases. The European Commission looked at the merger and said no concerns. They argued that because Essilor and Luxottica were not direct competitors, one made lenses, one made frames, the merger would not reduce competition. They said the combined company would have efficiencies. They said consumers would benefit. Consumers did not benefit. In the 5 years following the merger, the average price of prescription eyewear in the United States increased by approximately 20%. Frame prices increased by 30% in some categories. Lens prices increased by 15%. The efficiencies the Commission predicted did not result in lower prices. The vertical integration did not create savings passed to consumers. It created a machine that extracted maximum value at every layer. The European Commission made a mistake. They approved a monopoly and called it a partnership. There is one bright spot in this monopoly. One company managed to build an alternative. One brand grew outside the EssilorLuxottica machine. Warby Parker. Founded in 2010, Warby Parker started as a direct-to-consumer brand. They designed their own frames. They sourced lenses from independent manufacturers. They sold online, bypassing the retail monopolies. They kept prices low. $95 for a complete pair of prescription glasses. They grew fast. By 2024, Warby Parker controlled approximately 8% of the United States eyewear market. That does not sound like much, but in a market dominated by one company, 8% is significant. Warby Parker proved that competition is possible. They proved that you do not need to be owned by EssilorLuxottica to sell glasses. You do not need to buy frames from Luxottica. You do not need to buy lenses from Essilor. You do not need to sell through LensCrafters or Sunglass Hut. You can build your own thing. Other brands followed. Zenni Optical offers prescription glasses starting at $6.95. EyeBuyDirect sells frames for $29. Felix Gray sells blue light blocking glasses for $95. These brands are not threatening EssilorLuxottica's monopoly. They are not going to break up the vertical stack, but they are proving that alternatives exist. They are proving that glasses do not have to cost $400. They are proving that the $400 price tag is a choice, not a necessity. That is the real competition, not market share. Price, truth. Who paid for EssilorLuxottica's $49 billion in revenue? Who paid for their record operating margins? Who paid for their 150,000 employees and their 7,000 retail locations and their 5 layers of vertical integration? You did. Every person who bought a pair of glasses in the last decade paid into this machine. Every employer who offered vision insurance paid into this machine. Every taxpayer who subsidized employer, sponsored insurance, paid into this machine. The average American buys a new pair of prescription glasses every 2 years. The average cost is between $300 and $600 depending on the frame choice and lens type. Over a lifetime, the average American spends approximately $8,000 on eyewear. Multiply that by 175 million adult Americans who wear glasses. That is $1.4 trillion spent on eyewear over the lifetimes of current adults. EssilorLuxottica captures approximately 50% of that spending. That is $700 billion. Over the lifetime of the current adult population, one company will extract $700 billion from American consumers. And they did it legally. They did it with regulatory approval. They did it with consumer consent. Nobody forced you to buy Ray-Ban. Nobody forced you to shop at LensCrafters. Nobody forced you to use EyeMed insurance. You chose it. You chose the brand. You chose the store. You chose the insurance. You chose the price. except you did not really choose. You chose from a menu where every option was owned by the same company. You chose from a store where every brand was manufactured by the same parent. You chose from an insurance plan that only pays for products made by the company that owns the insurance. That is not choice. That is a closed system. And every dollar you spend stays inside. 3 things. First, if you wear glasses, ask for your pupillary distance, PD, on your prescription. It is a simple measurement, the distance between your pupils in millimeters. Most optometrists do not automatically include it because they want you to buy glasses from them. But you have a legal right to your complete prescription, including PD. With your PD, you can buy glasses from Warby Parker, Zenni, EyeBuyDirect, or any online retailer. You do not have to pay $400 at LensCrafters. Second, consider direct-to-consumer brands: Warby Parker, Zenni Optical, EyeBuyDirect, Felix Gray. They are not owned by EssilorLuxottica. They source their inventory independently. They sell at lower prices because they are not paying the brand tax. $95 at Warby Parker is a complete pair of prescription glasses, frames, and lenses. $400 at LensCrafters is the same product with a $300 brand tax. Third, share this video with someone who just bought glasses, the person who paid $400 at Sunglass Hut and thinks they bought premium quality, the person who paid $300 at LensCrafters with EyeMed insurance and thinks the insurance saved them money, the person who paid $200 for Ray-Bans and thinks they bought a luxury product. They bought a $10 frame with a $170 logo tax from a company that owns the frame factory, the lens factory, the store, and the insurance that paid for it. That is not luxury. That is a vertical monopoly, and it is legal in every country on Earth. And one more thing. Remember that layer 4? The insurance, EyeMed. The company you pay premiums to every month is the same company that owns the store where you spend those premiums. Your vision insurance is the lock that keeps you inside the machine. That is the next video.